Here's a mindful man reading another chapter of Ghost School. When he got back to meet the gang in the canteen, he told them all what he had seen. They were fairly amazed, but in some ways they had expected something to happen. They didn't feel like ghosts, but in some ways they were. When he told them about the message on the mirror, James got angry. That's it, he said. I'll have to confront him. We haven't enough evidence, Tom stated. He's right, Lucy and Anne agreed. We have to do something. It's gone on too long and we must act. They decided to go to the headmaster's study as there was safety in numbers. They were all nervous and they marched along but kept it to themselves. James led the group, with the caretaker following closely behind. He knocked hard on the door. The headmaster put his coffee down and answered. He was surprised to see so many people there. Each one of them told him what they had seen and how it implicated him. Even the caretaker waded into the argument and told him of his suspicions. This was risky as he didn't want to lose his job, but he had to speak his mind. The headmaster just laughed. Do you really believe all this nonsense? He said. Yes, we do, said James and Tom, and they nodded enthusiastically. We know you're a killer, said Lucy. First one girlfriend disappears and then another. It can't be a coincidence. The others agreed. The headmaster blushed fiercely. Look, he said, I've had enough of this rubbish. I've got a busy day and I don't need this kind of pressure. Also, he said, pointing a finger at them all, you could find yourself in major trouble. Now get out of my sight before I really lose my temper. Say what you like, said the caretaker, but you haven't heard the last of us. And with that he motioned for the others to follow him. Well, that didn't go down too well, said Tom. Don't worry, said James. At least he knows where he is, and he's bound to make a mistake sooner or later. The others agreed, but he knew they had to watch their backs from then on. The problem, said Tom, is we need some proof, and I don't know how we're going to get it. We need to catch him in the act, said James. We know he's got a new girlfriend, and we can keep an eye on her and warn her. They all agreed to watch each other's backs. They weren't sure he'd commit another crime, but they weren't going to take that chance. They had a free afternoon, and James and Anne decided to hang out and spend time together, as it had been a stressful few days. They lay down on their bunks and held each other. I wish we were back on Earth, James said plaintively. It gets a bit claustrophobic here. Everybody knows each other's business, and I wish we could just run away. Me too, said Anne, with tears in her eyes, and they held each other and fell into a gentle sleep. Tom and Lucy decided to let off a bit of steam by playing tennis. It was a lovely autumn day and crisp and bright. He bounced around in his white shorts and t-shirt. They rallied for a while until she began to feel hot and sweaty. He had a strong serve even when he was playing for fun. It was heavy on their feet and their plum soles were melting in the sun. After half an hour they decided to visit James and Anne as they were exhausted. When they got there they were surprised that the curtains were drawn and they didn't want to interrupt things. They knocked on the door and no one answered, but they heard a crash and they looked at each other. Then to their astonishment they heard the head's voice. Oh my God, he's in there, we've got to do something, Lucy shouted, and Tom rammed his shoulder against the door and it flew open. They were astonished to see the head pinning James to the wall with his hand on his neck. James' eyes were popping out of his head and he was turning blue. Anne was laying in an armchair and her body was limp. It was obvious that she wasn't sleeping. Tom grabbed the head's arm and pulled it back with all his strength. The head shouted out as if he trapped his finger in a heavy door. James slumped to the ground like a soggy sack of potatoes, moaning quietly to himself. The head turned to face Tom with a mad, tortured look on his face. I'm going to enjoy this, he gleefully exclaimed. He put his hand inside his suit pocket and to everyone's surprise and terror he pulled out a dagger. It glinted in the light with foreboding. Tom stepped back as the blade swept before him. He gulped as a button was plucked from his shirt and fell to the ground like a black tear. The knife was getting closer and closer. He was trapped against the wall and he slowly moved towards the window. He knew they were locked and he knew there was just a pane of glass between him and life and death. The head came in for the kill. The knife cut across Tom's cheek, leaving a red line. Suddenly a shadow moved across the window. Out of the corner of Tom's astonished eye, he could see the librarian hanging in mid-air. Her hair flew behind her and her eyes lit like coals. The window blew open as if hit by a hurricane. The head turned in astonishment and squinted at the apparition before him. Momentarily, that is, until a shower of glass pierced his searching eyes and face. He let out a strangled scream as a piece of glass the size of a 50-pence piece embedded into his neck. The blood was pouring out of him and everyone watched his death throes. No one moaned and no one spoke. He fell to the floor, grabbing at his neck as a pool of blood spread from him, reaching further and further out. Hope you enjoyed that chapter. Please submit.